evening. So today I've got a question from JC Jade for the 40 Questions in Lent series that I'm doing on this channel. And JC says, could you make a video about your poetry process? Like, how do you get in touch with your feelings to be able to put them on paper? And tips for those who want to get into poetry. I want to, but when I picked up a pen, I didn't know where to start. So for those of you who might be your first video, I make poetry on the internet, and that is like the funnest part of what I do on the internet, I think. I've written poems about creativity and Brexit and who gets to say YouTube is dead. While I still consider myself quite a new poet, or even using the word poet towards myself is like, feels a bit weird, I have actually been writing poetry for quite some time. The first thing I want to say and the first thing I want to reiterate is that nobody taught me how to write poetry. You can learn how to get better at poetry, how to free yourself up, because really I think it's a mental thing as well. There will be building work noises in the back of this video, because if you do own a beautiful London townhouse in the middle of Zone 2, why wouldn't you extend it further into your rented neighbour's garden? If there is a barrier to entry in your head, you have fundamentally misunderstood the purpose of poetry. To be honest, I would never ever have gone near poetry if it wasn't for a teacher that I had in my sixth form who got me really into Philip Larkin, who is still my favourite poet to date, I would say. Here's my favourite poem by him. It just goes, "This is the first thing I have understood. Time is the echo of an axe within a wood." That is literally the whole poem. When I went to university, I could probably name literally 2 to 3 poets. When I started at university, I could probably only name 3 poets: William Shakespeare, Philip Larkin, and Carol Ann Duffy. That was probably it. If you think people who have been writing poetry have been secretly weaned on poetry, you're wrong. Like, welcome. Of course, there are ways to learn how to get better at poetry. Of course, it's important to know who other poets are and study them and look at why they're successful or unsuccessful in your eyes. In fact, my friend Jen runs a poetry course that's online, and I will leave a link below to that because that sounds so fun. But it's kind of like Dolores Funcotier says in Sister Act 2.
Don't ask me about being a writer. If when you wake up in the morning, you can think of nothing but writing, then you're a writer.
I also want to reiterate that it is okay to be bad for a long time, and perhaps I still am bad, but I just wanted to share with you. I used to have a poetry blog at uni, and I want to share with you one of the poems I thought it was okay to put up on the internet. Now, I'm not saying I'm not going to poetry share myself, but I'm just going to give you a sample of how much my poetry has changed, maybe. This poem is called "You Are the Toy in My Cereal." You're the toy in my cereal, the penny in my path. I hope you start to notice you're the sparkle in my laugh. You're the book I'll never finish, the curiosity never ends. I'll spend my life turning pages, we'll spend our life being friends. You're the wagon wheel at break, you're the excitement of the fair. You're the change in my pocket I forgot was even there. You're the reason for my whistle, when I should be in dismay. You're the doodle in my notebook, you're the 4th leaf on my day. To write poetry, simply, for me, you need to feel strongly enough about something or be curious enough about something that you want to kind of almost in a creative way throw up. Like, you don't have time to write a novel about it. You don't have time to write a song about it. You don't have time to unpack it in an intellectual essay. And that's why I think some poetry is so powerful, because it has this visceral, like, I swear I say the word visceral in every video. It has this immediacy to it, and when I discovered slam poetry, I also fell in love with the idea of like a boss last line, like an explosive, shut down last line. So really what it is just having a feeling like that, and also knowing what you think sounds good. So it's good to absorb lots of different kinds of poetry. I thought I would give you some examples of some that I really like. The first one is Mistakes in the Background by Laura Dockrill. This is a doodle notebook of all of her poetry, and it is bloody amazing, and it really frees up your verse. It's genuinely really clever and well structured, but it also frees up your mind to what a poem could be. There's more classical stuff like The Rape of the Lock, which is one that I read at university, and where I realised how much I love rhyming. Poems don't have to rhyme, but I feel like there is hidden humour in them rhyming, and this is the most playful old poetry book you'll ever read. Carol Ann Duffy, this is my favourite collection by her, it's called Rapture. I found the words in the back of a drawer, wrapped in black cloth, like 3 rings slipped from a dead woman's hand, cold, dull gold, and I held them before, years ago, then put them away, forgetting whatever it was I could use them to say. I touched the first to my lips, the second, the third, like a sacrament, like a pledge, and my breath warmed them, the words I needed to utter this, small words and few. I rubbed them until they gleamed in my palm. I love you, I love you, I love you, until they renew. Kate Tempest, Let Them Eat Chaos, which is a political riff with just so many simple words but so many beautiful concepts. And this is about loads of different people's nights in London looking up the sky and wondering what the world is going to come to in the future. And it's really, that's another very different one. George the Poet, Search Party. Can't find the collection right now, but that is a cross between like spoken word rap and poetry, and it's political, it's melodical in the way it's put together, but like Laura Dockrill, it's not intimidating to read. It doesn't have like some kind of pentameter to get your mind into. It's just reading words. There's also Tales from Outer Suburbia, which isn't a poetry collection, but is a really great, they're little short stories illustrated, sometimes just on one page. This one's called The Water Buffalo, about a water buffalo who sits in a field and directs people where to go in the village. And they really help me write poetry because they're a whole story contained in like barely any words, which is essentially what poetry is. And then lastly, Poetry Please, which is a Radio 4 collection of poems that I always dip into because I don't feel like I really have a great wealth of knowledge about poetry, and that's got maybe like one or two poems from all of the greatest poets ever. So it's a good way to discover the stuff that I want without having to like completely immerse myself in this huge Oxbridge world of poetry that I just don't. I started off not really having access to it, and now I'm older, I like so much stuff that I don't have time to know about all of the historical well-known poets. So that's a really great way to like have them all on your shelf and dip into for random bits of inspiration. Another huge resource is slam poetry on the internet. My favourite poet online has to be Mark Grist, who I've seen live now, but I kind of discovered him because he wrote a poem called I Like a Girl Who Reads. Then he did one called You Are the Hottest of All of the Gingers, and he does slam battles with students because he's a teacher. He does like funny slam battles with some of his gobby students or people who are playing his gobby students in the role play, and it's I'll link that below. There's also loads of other button poetry poems. I'm really excited about this, as you can tell, so I'm probably going to leave loads of my favourite slam poems in the description. Please go and look at those because it really helps to hear things. There's one called Pussy Monster, which is my favourite, which is a girl who just rearranges all of the words in a rap song in order of frequency. So it starts off being like the, house, car, light, and then it goes to the, and then the end of it is just pussy. It's phenomenal. There's lots of experimental poets online at the moment, and I'm addicted. I'll leave them all below. But really just find a rhythm that captures your imagination and just keep that. Maybe even memorize. I've also found it interesting to memorize some poetry of other people's, so I have it in my head, and it's like this, I don't know, like knowing somebody else's poetry inside out, I find helps me write my own and helps me really understand how it works and how it works to be said aloud as well. Because I think you can read a poem and go, oh, that was nice, but you don't really know something until you learn it off by heart, I don't think. Does that make me sound really traditional and old? The way you write poetry, the way I write poetry is on my phone on the bus when I'm going somewhere. I think that it is a kind of performative and falsified idea for me to sit down and be like, I'm going to write poetry now. Honestly, the way that I find most helpful is to use it as a procrastination tool. It's something that I do when I'm supposed to be doing something else. And often I'll hear a phrase or I'll think a thought or I'll like summarize something to somebody in some way with a sentence. I'll write that sentence in my phone and then later I'll come back and build off that one sentence. Usually that sentence is the kind of pivotal sentence of the whole poem and I unpack it later, or I put that sentence right at the end because I think that's got the most punch, and that's what captures your imagination about a poem should be the last line at the end, I think. I wanted to answer this question even though I don't really have an answer because I love poetry and I want people to write it, and I now consider myself a poet even though I never used to feel like I was qualified. Again, my friend Jem Campbell makes way better poetry videos than me. I'm going to link some of them below. Thanks for watching. I'm making 40 videos during Lent, so do click here to watch the whole playlist. Leave your poetry recommendations downstairs for me, or if you write poetry, let me know where you've put it. Frogslog out.